can you give us an idea of the overall amount of territory that he explored? Because I think one of the claims you make is that he deserves as much or more credit than people like Lewis and Clark or other explorers of the North American continent. He explored a vast area of territory, right?
Yeah, and in the sense, credit to, I would just say because of the way he did it, not in so much as necessarily his historical contribution couldn't necessarily be compared to Lewis and Clark, but no one ever really did it quite the way he did it. So what happened was Garcés was trained at Querétaro as a missionary. He gets there in 1763. This is a Franciscan college. It's like an elite training center. Essentially, you might think of it as for missionaries. There are a couple of dozen of these in the New World, in the Spanish dominions at the time he gets there. The Jesuits are expelled from Spain and all its dominions in 1767, and the Franciscans at Querétaro are one of the groups that are chosen to take their place on the mission frontier. And so Garcés volunteers for that duty. He's one of 14 or 15 guys who are sent to the furthest part of the northern frontier, northern Sonora, the Pimeria Alta. And Garcés is put at the most exposed post there is, which is San Javier del Bac, San Xavier del Bac, south of today's Tucson, south of Tucson then. It's the most exposed post, I think it's fair to say, on the northern frontier. What makes him remarkable is almost any other of his brother friars would have sort of hunkered down there and possibly made as many trips down to Tubac, where the Presidio was, as possible. And Garcés went further. He decided part of the orders were to explore the lands beyond, and he took that very, very literally, and more radically than I think it was intended, even. And so he makes 5 separate major journeys, exploration journeys, entradas, they might be called in Spanish, in 1768, 1770, 71, 74, and 75, 76. And all in all, to answer your question, thousands of miles are covered in those journeys. But what makes them very unique, and I'll get back to one of them here in a second, is that almost always he traveled alone, at least alone with respect to any fellow Spaniards or Europeans, often with native guides, never with arms, and often without really any food or water. And this is in the hottest region of the North American continent, the hottest, driest region of the North American continent. It's just an incredible story of courage. The first journey is a couple hundred miles. Next one, same. The 1771 journey, he figures out how to cross the Sonoran Desert and then the Yuma Desert to the west of the Colorado River and sees a route to the California coast. That was an incredible achievement in and of itself. That's only a few hundred miles. Basically the same journey again in 1774 with the first Anza expedition. The journey that makes him stand out is the 1775, 1776, another solo expedition he took from Yuma up to the Needles area, across the Mojave Desert to Mission San Gabriel near Los Angeles, back into the Central Valley north of Bakersfield, then from there across the Mojave Desert again, then across northern Arizona into the Grand Canyon, then over to Hopi Land, Moki, as the Spanish knew it, to Old Oribe village, back to the Colorado River, back down to Yuma, back to the Tucson area, San Javier del Bac. That journey is 1,500 to 2,000 miles in that range. Took him almost a year, about 11 months. Never in the company of another Spaniard the whole time, except when he was at Mission San Gabriel. Just a remarkable and almost, I think, unparalleled journey when you take all factors into consideration in American history, if we can consider this part of American history. So, yeah, that's what makes him. That's the really fascinating thing. And of course, each one of those journeys he kept a diary of. thank God we have them. And they all are full of adventures and near-death experiences and encounters that are so revealing and so historically fascinating. I don't think we have that from quite anyone else that I know of.
So how come we don't know more about, and this, how come we don't know more about Francisco Garcés? In fact, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who really loves this podcast. And I said, "Oh yeah, you're going to like this interview. We're talking about Father Garcés, who traveled all over the American Southwest, et cetera, et cetera." And he's like, "How come I've never heard of him? Why do you think we probably don't know as much about him as, say, others like Sarah or even Father Font, who went with Ansa's second expedition?"
The main reason is, unlike Font, for example, unlike Sarah, Garcés was a terrible writer. He was not an intellectual. So his writing is bad in a couple of ways. First is the orthography. The handwriting is terrible.
You mentioned that
he
in
had
the
some
book.
sort of
You talk about his letters were really hard to follow, even for the people who received them then.
Exactly. So they were hard for them then. Imagine how hard they are for now, even for true experts like yourself or someone like Rosemary Beebe, who translated some documents for me to make this book possible. Even Rosemary, who's an incredible translator, surely one of the, if not the best translator of Spanish documents from this time period, gave up on a few. Said, "I'm just going to summarize these and give you bullet points the best I can of what I think is going on here." So that's part of it. It was a bad, not just bad handwriting, but he just wasn't a good writer. He may have had a learning disability of some kind. He may have been dyslexic. People have speculated on those things. Rosemary points out that he was an incredible inventor of neologisms, just smashing together several words to make one new word. So he presents challenges just from the sources perspective. I think that's number one. Herbert Bolton, founder of the field of borderland studies, really wanted to write a biography of Garcés. He was he had high regard for him, but he always had too many publishing projects on his plate and never got around to it. John Kessel, very important scholar in this area, still alive today, but his heyday was from the 70s, 80s, 90s. John wanted to write a biography, just never got around to it. So it's been on the radar for people. And then in the last, 30, 40 years, it's just not where the field has gone. You don't, Spanish missionaries are not in fashion from a scholarly perspective. So it probably took someone like me coming from totally outside the field to say, yeah, what the heck? I think this guy is worthy of a book length study. So I think those are probably the factors. Garcés kind of did it to himself. He just not, Font is so quotable and such a wonderful writer. Garcés is more of a doer. As I say, maybe a little bit of a holy fool. Certainly, there's a simplicity to him, and I think that's unfortunately what that meant was that the sources he left behind were not as rich in some ways as someone like Font.